What's going on, everyone? Another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. We got Thursday, December 9th edition of the podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres, publisher and lead editor of Ducks Digest, covering the Oregon Ducks for Sports Illustrated on Fan Nation. And on this episode of the podcast, I got a guest with me. A lot of you may know him by now. He is Nick Batty. He's just across the way. How we doing, Nick? Thanks for being here, man.
Doing well. Just, looking at Twitter, checking flights, etc.
It's flight tracking season. I mean, it's funny because I feel like it was kind of flight tracking season before the movie even became official, sort of, just because we didn't know what was happening, right? But we got our answer as far as, Mario making the move to Miami. And then now the Ducks are in the coaching search. They're all into it now. I think a cool way to start off the pod is just talking about some of the recent news that we got. You just finished up writing the story that former offensive coordinator, I should say, Joe Moorhead, now the Akron Zips head coach, is going to be coaching for the Ducks in the Alamo Bowl. Something that you don't often see happen, especially when someone takes a head coaching job. What were your thoughts there on that development?
Yeah, well, I think it's definitely good for the team that there can be some continuity, especially on the offensive side of the ball with Mario gone. So I think it's definitely going to be helpful for the team to, be able to focus on the game a little more, have, some normalcy in the program in a very turbulent time. And it's not unprecedented. We saw Marcus Arroyo after he took the UNLV job. He stayed on and was the offensive coordinator in the Rose Bowl. So this has happened before with the Ducks, and it'll now be interesting to see what happens with Tim DeRuyter. Is he going to coach in the bowl game? And a couple of the assistants, Alex Mirabal, Marcel Yates. What are they going to do? So we still have some uncertainty around them, but at least with Moorhead, we know that he'll be there. He'll be calling the plays, and it'll give whoever's at quarterback some comfort as they go in.
Man, that 2019 Rose Bowl, or 2020 Rose Bowl, I should say, that was really the offensive firepower showcase of a game for the Ducks, huh?
Well, I mean, they deployed running Herbie, and that was all that was needed, right? Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, no, it was bizarre. I was so on edge watching that game. It was just like Herbert's the only one that's doing anything for Oregon, so it's going to be wild to really see how they. I mean, I felt like the offensive line just completely terrified me because it was just the offensive line just feel like they didn't show up that game. But one thing I forgot to say off the top, if you guys are here in the chat on the stream, go ahead and leave us a comment or ask a question to kind of help guide the show. That's what the show is for you guys, the viewers and the listeners. Want to see where you're at in this coaching search and what you guys want to talk about. And then if you're watching on the replay, go ahead and leave a comment about how you're feeling as a Duck fan right now, because the program is pretty much in limbo, like I said in the thumbnail of this video, as they look for a new coach. And then also make sure you're locked into the social platforms with both Nick and myself. You can follow him at the name on your screen there, NickBat22, and you can follow me at mtorresports on Twitter. And go ahead and subscribe to the channel, Oregon Football Max Torres. If you're watching this live, youtube.com/Oregon Football Max Torres. Really appreciate it. But I think one okay, no, sorry, we'll stay on Moorhead. I had a tweet that I wanted to show later, but Stefan said, Moorhead staying at OC for the bowl game terrifies me that they're going to play Anthony Brown. What do you think about that, Nick?
I don't really think it's going to be much of a difference of who's going to start a quarterback based off who's calling the plays. I feel like the more interesting part of this is the fact that Joe Moorhead's going to be the offensive coordinator without Mario Cristobal as the head coach. There was some speculation around throughout the year that maybe Mario was handcuffing Moorhead's ability to truly call the plays and be the offensive guy that he was at Penn State and such throughout the year. And now we're going to kind of see a game of that. Moorhead without any handcuffs, being able to do whatever he wants to do with the offense. And we'll see how it looks. Was it something that, maybe Mario kind of, made it so he wanted to establish his physical running game up the middle, or is was that more of just a collaboration that it was going to be that way no matter what? So from that standpoint, I feel like this is going to be a really interesting thing to watch for in the bowl game. And as for the quarterback position, I think the vast majority of uh, fans at this point want to see one of the freshmen, likely Ty Thompson, to play in this game. And I feel like there's still a decent chance that that's going to happen, at least in some capacity. You kind of remember the Fiesta Bowl last year; they played some Anthony Brown in there along with Tyler Shuck, and it kind of felt like they were trying to see what they had going into the following year uh, at quarterback, so they would have an idea going into spring ball and fall camp. I feel like we could see something similar with Ty Thompson here. Maybe they play some of Anthony Brown to give him that send off. Being a senior and all that, but you also really need to know what you have with at least one of your freshman quarterbacks, and I'm sure whoever the new head coach is will also really like to see that.
I'm right there with you. I think I'm exactly like I don't think that Moorhead returning necessarily makes me think that he's going to go with Brown. I think that there's the idea out there that McClendon wants to coach a good game because he wants to you want to control what you can control in such a hectic situation like this, and he wants to hopefully win this game and then show the staff that there's reason to keep him on. And I think he's already done that. Like he's a phenomenal coach and he does a really good job recruiting. The receivers just haven't been getting the ball to showcase their abilities. And I'm kind of the belief that because he's back and Mario isn't here anymore, we might see somebody, someone else come in, pull out all the stops. I think Dylan was writing that because you usually do the keys to the game, but he did the keys to the game for the second Utah game in the Pac-12 championship, and he was saying unload the whole damn playbook. So hopefully we'll see some of that. This time in the bowl game and see either a Ty Thompson or a Jay Butterfield or a Robbie Ashford because they all deserve shots at this point, and there's nothing to gain from putting Anthony Brown in that game. Just as far as looking at the future, he's not going to be with the program next year, and I think that it'd be good to see the Ducks run the ball a lot. But man, I just say unleash it. Get those skill players the ball in space, let them run down the field and try to get it to them because that'll definitely make things a lot more exciting. Before we get to the next question, I talked about this earlier, so this was kind of a fun thing to do. I was just checking in with the Oregon fan base this morning, kind of just asking how people are feeling because the coaching search continues. So here it is. I said, "How you feeling this morning, Duck fans?" And let me see if I can just read some of the good responses. This one's from Matt Kinoshita. He said, "I'm impatient, but I absolutely do not want an impatient hire. So I'm impatiently waiting patiently." So I thought that was a pretty accurate kind of tone vibe check, if you want to call it, because it's just such an important hire for Oregon that you don't want to rush it. You can't just name somebody for the heck of it. I thought that was pretty accurate as far as where things go. On edge waiting, we have worried we go all in on Justin, as in Justin Wilcox. Someone said not Lane Kiffin. Anxious but also excited. Someone said back is a little stiff but otherwise fine. Shout out to Eric Hovland if you're listening. Shout out to that response. And then, a lot of people are afraid that it's Wilcox, is what they're saying. But obviously that's why we got to follow everything. You have the funny gif here from this guy of a wrestler. It looks like checking his watch, looking to see what time it is. So I feel like, obviously you were saying, Nick, that you've been obviously all over Duck Twitter. What's your kind of tone that you're getting from the fan base right now?
Yeah, I'm definitely seeing maybe a lot of impatient people, and that's not really something that I'm feeling right now personally. But I can understand why fans might feel that way, and definitely a lot of people who feel like with all this radio silence from Oregon side of things, there's a lot of just chatter amongst the fans that I feel like become rumors and such, and a lot of people thinking that there have been reports out there that they've talked to Kalani Sitake. They're planning on interviewing Wilcox. They're planning on interviewing Chip Kelly. And none of those guys, I don't think, for the majority of the fans, are really home run hires or anything that's really splashy. And I think that kind of makes the fans worried and impatient about what might be happening here. But I just say, just relax a little bit, because I always felt like going into this week that you wouldn't have any hire in place by maybe Friday, potentially even the weekend, because as quickly as you want this to get done and you want the head coach out on the recruiting trail to try to revive this recruiting class, you also need to look first and foremost that you're making the right hire for the long term. If you're taking an extra 24 hours to try to really vet and make sure you're getting the right guy, that needs to happen. One day of recruiting isn't going to uh, be more important than 4, 5, 6, however many years that you're going to have this coach. So I just stay patient. Rob Mullins has proven that he's been able to find good people, not just in football but other sports as well. So I would just stay patient. They're always going to try to do what they think is best for the Ducks, and just see where it unfolds from there.
I'm right there with you. I think that Mullins has a proven track record of bringing in good hires. Obviously, the past two departures aren't the way that you want things to end. But maybe now you have a chance to get in front of that. And I think that's why a lot of people are calling for a long-term hire. But I feel like the more I think about it is that you don't necessarily need, that shouldn't be something that you're prioritizing right now, because I feel like they were right knocking on the door of the playoff. I'd say that, they were a playoff contender. But they just obviously couldn't get it done. And I think that the departure obviously had something to do with that. But I think that's another point we can talk about here, Nick, is just the timing of this search and how important it really is for the Oregon football program. I want to take this time to plug a recent story that we have on Ducks Digest. Our Dylan Rubin King wrote it, and he titled it "A Walk to Autzen or to a Trail of Broken Dreams: The Importance of Oregon's Head Coaching Search." And then he said it's a deep dive into why the timing of Mario Cristobal's departure could be critically damaging to the Oregon football program. So you read something like that, and then you understand why this is so important for Oregon. I think you look at all the elite talent that he brought to Oregon. You want to bring in somebody that's going to be able to utilize that talent and to get the most potential out of it. So I think, especially on the offensive side of the ball, there's a lot of talent we've seen clearly on the defensive side of the ball, but I think that the defense was the stronger side of the ball potentially this year, just in terms of, I don't know, it's hard. I say that, but then I don't know, maybe I'm backtracking a little bit because there were all those injuries. But maybe I put it this way. I feel like the defensive talent was better utilized than the offensive talent. Maybe that's a good way to say what I'm kind of getting at here, because we saw Dante Thornton and Troy Franklin getting a lot of time towards the end of the year, with the injuries to Johnny Johnson and Jalen Redd and the departure of Micah Pittman, but they hardly got the ball. And I was watching Troy's highlight the other day on Instagram, and a lot of his plays were just, they were getting short passes, screens, just nothing deep downfield. And then I was watching some more of that Georgia Alabama game this morning, and that was just a passing fest. And college football is a passing game now, and all the best teams have explosive offenses. So kind of went on a little bit of a tangent there, but I think it makes more sense why they need to get someone who's an offensive minded guy, in my opinion.
Yeah. I personally, you've had Bellotti and Chip and Helfrich and Taggart and Chris Ball have all been offensive guys. So it makes sense to go with another offensive guy. But personally, I don't think that is as much of a necessity right now. I feel like it's almost harder to find a elite defensive mind and coach in college football than offensive at this point. And if go a different direction, maybe that'll give you a little bit of an advantage in some capacity. So, you know, I really don't feel like it's that big of a deal if you go offense or defensive. I just think you find the best coach, period, and you go from there. You look at what Dave Aranda's been able to do with his defense with Baylor. I I truly believe that that would be the best hire for the Ducks. And now we haven't heard much of Dave Aranda in his name in this coaching search, so it might not come to fruition this time. But just someone like that, you know, even though he's defensive, I still think it would be the best option for the Ducks, and I wrote as such in our little roundtable that we had today.
Yeah, that was a really fun story to put together. If you haven't read already, you can head over to Ducks Digest and read the roundtable about head coaching candidates that we think that the Ducks should pursue. As Nick said, he talked about Dave Aranda. You think about sharp defensive minds out there in the college football landscape. Another name that I'm seeing people talk about that's even more unrealistic, I would probably say, is Dan Lanning, the Georgia defensive coordinator. I feel like after seeing the product that the Bulldogs are putting out on the field this year, it's going to be super hard to pry him away from the SEC, especially from a program that has some obviously huge backing with boosters and all the financial resources that Oregon has, and then some, probably, I would wager to say. But in that story, just because you bring it up, Nick, I said Lane Kiffin was the guy that I think they should go after. And I understand that it's maybe a little bit more unrealistic, just given the past that he's kind of had, and he hasn't stayed at a lot of jobs very long. But I think that just the excitement that it would create, and how well he's had his offenses going, I think that he's a guy that would do well at Oregon, just from the talent that's there, making things more entertaining to watch on the offensive side of the ball, especially in the passing attack. I wrote in my little blurb there in the story, how can you look at Matt Corral and what Kiffin's done with him and not be pretty excited about the possibilities of him working with a guy like a Ty Thompson or any of the other guys on that Oregon roster. So I think that's pretty cool. We'll have to see, what how this really develops. I think a lot of people are saying Friday, like you mentioned, so that would be tomorrow, but that'd be it'd be 5 days, 4 and some change, if you think about Mario officially leaving on Monday for a really, really important hire to come into place, because Oregon was right there on the doorstep. And I feel like at this point, I think we're past the point of Rose Bowls being enough. We've seen that you can recruit top 5 talent, top 10 talent nationally as far as the classes go. But it was not utilized to the fullest extent. And I think that that's why it makes sense for them to take a little bit longer with this hire if it doesn't end up being tomorrow, because it's so important for them when you're looking at all these other hires across the sport, and especially closer to home in the Pac-12 with Lincoln Riley. Now what running the Pac is looking much more uncertain.
No question about it.
All right, let's see. We're getting some questions here. Mike Peters says, what's the deal with Gary Patterson? I think he would be a great hire. Checks most of the boxes for me. So, yeah, Gary Patterson, latest stop was when he was at TCU, as far as I know. I'm going to see if I can pull up something over here just to kind of do a little bit of research. Do you have any initial thoughts on that kind of reaction, Nick?
Yeah, I think Gary Patterson would be a great defensive coordinator hire if they could get him in that capacity. I just feel like, his time at TCU had kind of just come to an end there, and he's also on the older side. I don't believe he has many West Coast ties. It just doesn't feel like it's the right timing for Oregon to go that direction. He's definitely proven he can coach at a pretty high level at Power 5 level at TCU there. He transferred TCU from a Group of 5 school to a Power 5 school. So there's definitely some things to like about him. But I feel like Oregon would hopefully be trying to go a little bit higher than Gary Patterson in this one.
Yeah, I think age is definitely a factor that you kind of would like to consider, from a relatability standpoint with recruits. I know that's a big box that a lot of people are talking about. But I also think it does speak to why he would maybe be an appealing candidate, like Mike is saying here, because he's a pretty strong defensive mind in a conference like the Big 12, which we know is pretty much predominantly known for dominant offenses. You talk about schools like Oklahoma, obviously. Texas is obviously kind of hit and miss. Texas Tech, though, with the air raid, and then Oklahoma State has been pretty strong as well. So I agree that I think that he's I can see the interest, but I don't think he's up there for them. You were talking about the West Coast ties, Nick. I thought this was kind of funny. I'm looking on his Wikipedia page. In 1992, he coached the Oregon Lightning Bolts of the Professional Spring Football League, which was an outdoor football league slated to begin in 1992.
Well,
So
there you go. That's West Coast
there,
ties right there.
and then and then you also have he was the DC at New Mexico in '96, and then he was the DB coach at Utah State in the early '90s as well. But yeah, no, I don't think he's the most realistic guy right now for the Ducks. Let's see. Also, okay, Stefan says, any thoughts on this Brentley Weissman tweet that's been making the rounds? I actually have that up here on my laptop, so let me just take a second to get this up, just so people can kind of see what I'm talking about. So yeah, if you're on the stream on YouTube, you can read it there for yourself. But I'll read it. He said, if the name I am hearing for the Oregon job is true, us Ducks will be over the moon. Talking, we will send Mario thank you cards for leaving us. Trying not to get my hopes up, but it's a credible source. So before we say anything here, I've never heard of this guy before. His bio says, former NFL scout with the Chargers. Worked with the Patriots, Raiders, UO, and UCLA. So, I mean, I don't want to go putting. I'm not saying this is credible or not. I mean, this whole coaching search, it's just been so behind closed doors, right? There's been hardly any information to come by with all of this lately. So, I don't really know. I wouldn't read too much into it. I mean, if anything, it kind of just seems like something that's going to get people excited, but I don't know. It's I guess you can think of the possibilities, right? You can think of I don't know, a huge name like Dabo Swinney. I mean, he's probably just way out of reach, I would think, on the surface, at least when you first think about that. But if you look a little bit further into it, Clemson had a down year. The ACC as a whole had a down year. You had Wake Forest and Pitt playing in the championship game. You have Miami taking the athletic director away from Clemson. I really would think it's a long shot, but those are kind of just my reactions to this tweet. I don't want to give it more credence than it deserves, just because we don't know very much about it, and it's pretty vague.
Yeah, I personally haven't heard anything that would make me that ecstatic, especially when we're in this part of the process of the coaching search. If something crazy were to happen like that, then more power to them. But I would say for now, I would just keep temper your expectations.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's our thoughts, Stefan. Don't sure it's fun to feed into the excitement and the hype and everything, but don't read too much into that one. Timonacci's question, oops, that's not the right one, sorry, is about Ty playing in the bowl game. And he said, so playing in the bowl game doesn't go against the 4-game redshirt rule. No, I believe that it does go. It would count for the 4 games that freshmen are allotted. That was obviously a really hot topic in the Utah game when the Ducks were just getting their doors blown off of them. Why didn't they bring in another quarterback? A lot of people think it should have been Ty. He has 3 games played so far this season. So I think that if he does, if logic follows, I think if he does play in this Alamo Bowl, then that'll be his 4th game, and they'll still be able to preserve that red shirt with his only other, real good chunk of action coming in that second half against Stony Brook when AB got hurt.
Yep, you nailed it. That's the deal with the 4-game redshirt rule. So they can play Ty in this game, and he can still use his redshirt.
And then Tim says, the fact we're starting with Georgia and Atlanta should push QB choice over the edge. Don't want your first-time starter to go into Atlanta for his first full game. Focus on the future. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. That was my feelings even before we got to this point in the season. Even once they lost that first game against Utah, I was in that first game against Utah. I was kind of thinking, my thoughts on this whole thing throughout the season when we kind of saw that AB wasn't wasn't living up to the hype, if you want to say that. I feel like he is what he was at Boston College. That's kind of just he's. I didn't think that it made a lot of sense for people to expect him to get to take a huge step, if you want to call it that. As long as the Pac-12 championship and the playoffs were within range, I didn't think they were going to make a quarterback change rather. But at the same time, when things got as ugly as they did in that first Utah game, I'm thinking I have nothing to lose here. Why not put him in to try to get that Pac-12 to stay alive in the Pac-12 championship race? What do you think there?
Yeah, I would have put Ty in that Pac-12 title game, but that's now in the past. Now different coach, different everything. So you can only really look forward, and I think starting Ty in the Alamo Bowl, or at least playing him a substantial amount, would be very beneficial for both Ty, the new coaching staff, and moving forward into next season's game against Georgia and beyond. You really need to see what you have at the quarterback position moving forward. Being able to know if you need to maybe go after a transfer in the transfer portal this offseason, or if you feel like you can rely on Ty going into next season. I feel like it'd be really helpful for Ty, first of all, to get that experience against a really good team in Oklahoma. I mean, they're up near the playoff conversation every single season. So to play against them, that'd be some great experience for him. It's probably going to be a pretty good environment there in San Antonio with a lot of Oklahoma fans there. And I really don't see much of a downside to playing Ty. It's really a low stakes game. Obviously, you want to win the bowl game, but at the end of the day, like there's no real uh, downside if you did lose. I think it's much more important to get Ty that experience.
Yeah, exactly. So we're on the same page there, or whoever else ends up, getting the job. I think both Robbie Ashford and Jay Butterfield deserve a shot. Jay Butterfield might be the best pure passer on this team. I know he's not as athletic as Thompson and Ashford, but he's really fun to watch throw. And then Robbie Ashford had some awesome plays in that spring game, but we haven't really seen anything other than that, because obviously it's just been Brown this season. Hayden says, I do not understand all the hate against Wilcox. I don't even know. I wouldn't say it's hate, but I think when you see a coach like Mario have the kind of success that he did, and how it was driven by recruiting, I think that you look at Wilcox and what he's done at Cal, which obviously isn't the best situation. They had that game against USC postponed, and they just don't have there's not a lot of talent on that roster. So I can understand what you're saying, Hayden, about, kind of hear Wilcox out a little bit. I just think when you look at how I think Oregon's elevated itself significantly since Mario was here, obviously, in the national conversation. And I think that the tone with a lot of fans is that they think that Oregon can probably just do a little bit better about as far as having someone who's more proven, whether it be as a head coach or even a coordinator that's looking to take that next step.
Yeah, I don't have any hate against Wilcox personally. I think he's probably a good guy, and he's of course Oregon is alma mater. He's probably loved Oregon his whole life, and I'm sure he would love to be the head coach at Oregon. But I'm just trying to look forward here and look at what can get Oregon to a national championship level. And Justin Wilcox simply hasn't quite shown that yet. His time at Cal has been really difficult from multiple perspectives. So I don't think you can really fault him for some of the issues that he's been dealing with there. But he still just hasn't quite gotten to that level where I'd be comfortable Oregon handing him the keys to this program and expecting him to improve on the already very high level they're at right now.
Definitely. And then we got our next question for the pod. Question is from AD. Thanks for the question. Can we expect more decommitments? Yeah, I mean, I think moving forward, it's already been really bad, right? So I don't want to be super pessimistic here, but none of the decommitments have surprised me at all, right? We saw two more just since in the time that I recorded this podcast yesterday. Cameron Williams, the Duncanville offensive lineman, decommitted after he got offered by Florida and TCU in the time since Cristobal's departure. And then there were reports out there, or a story I think I saw from 247 saying that Mario already visited him, and is pretty much making a push there. I think the quotation that I saw was we're gonna. He told me he's gonna recruit me the same way as when he was at Oregon, pretty much. So not a surprise there. And then Kelvin Banks obviously decommitted. And then this morning, Marion Winston, that was the one that kind of surprised me and caught me off guard, seeing that he's an in-state guy, linebacker from Central Catholic. That was one of the first commits. I think he might have been the first commit in the 2022 class all the way back in July 2020. So that was pretty shocking to see. And then you also throw in the fact that he's a brother of a former Duck linebacker, Lamar Winston. So I think that would be even more of a reason that you would think he would stay. But guys don't have time to wait around, man. I mean, they're trying to make that move and see what's right for them. With so many people signing in the early signing period and enrolling early. So I think that you see stuff like that and you understand why there's a lot of pressure to make this hire. But I feel like regardless of who you hire, it's going to be really hard to salvage who they have in this 2022 class, since Mario was the leader of so many recruiting efforts. So I think we're up to 5 now since Cristobal decommitted. And I don't want to say that they should expect more because it's already been so bad, but at the same time, it wouldn't shock me because I don't know how to. This is the first coaching change that I've covered since I got into recruiting, so I don't really know what like a typical fallout is. But it stands to reason that you're going to see this when you have a big move like that.
Yeah. Hey Max. So you, I'm sure, can share your screen and look up the tweet real quick. But
Sure.
Tweet from Chris Lowe, a senior writer at ESPN, and it was retweeted by Adam Rittenberg, who has been breaking a lot of news recently with coaching moves. He says Oregon is making a hard push to bring back Chip Kelly as the Ducks head coach. Sources tell ESPN. He has a lot of support there after taking Oregon to the national championship game in 2010, and his buyout at UCLA is $9 million. So,
What do we think about that, Chip Kelly? Do you want to start with that, or did you have any? I guess did you have any response to that last recruiting one, or do we want to just move on to this one?
We can move on to this real quick.
Okay, yeah. Give me some of your thoughts here off the top.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I've been an Oregon fan pretty much my whole life. I'm 21, so that checks out to kind of 2007 when I started going to Oregon games, and so I was a fan when Chip was at its peak and taking everyone by storm and going to natties and everything, and my heart would love for Chip to come back, but personally, my brain says it's probably not the best idea. Uh, I just feel like what he's done recently at UCLA is not quite at the level Oregon would want today, and Oregon's also kind of in a different place as to what they've been doing with Cristobal. Cristobal was much more of a physicality type of coach, and to switch it up and go to Chip Kelly, which he was very physical in his own right when he was at Oregon, no question about it, but you know, going from a power run game to a spread it out and do it Chip Kelly way. I feel like that might take this program a step back a little bit, and not to mention the recruiting element of things. Chip wasn't a great recruit at Oregon, and it's only gotten worse when he's been at UCLA now. So I definitely don't think it's the best option for Oregon, but at the same time, I would personally go with Chip over Sataki. I would go with Chip over Wilcox. So it's also not the worst option out there. And I am a nostalgic person, and there would be nothing better than for Chip to succeed at Oregon again. And if he were to come back and bring us more Rose Bowls and Natties, then that'd be incredible.
Yeah, we'll see if he ends up coming back and if they can get him back to that national championship, those appearances. I think my kind of 2 cents here, and I think a really good way to spin it was kind of how Josh Pate was putting it. If you guys listen to him on Late Kick, he has a lot of really cool perspectives, and I really like his work over there. It was talking about how Chip's a good coach. He's a good offensive mind, so that checks those boxes, but the rest of the college football world's caught up. I mean, does he still have the same edge that he did when he was last at Oregon? And I also feel like it kind of goes back to one of the comments that I think I saw in the chat was just Oregon wants an elite coach and they feel like they can kind of do better here. And then obviously the recruiting part of it's so big. I also feel like the recruiting part is more valuable and I think should be prioritized because you can bring in assistants that are more, they're better as far as the X's and O's go if they do choose to do a guy that has a heavy focus on recruiting. I think that was one of the, but at the same time, we don't want to get into, a lot of Oregon fans don't want to get into that same deal where you have a guy like Cristobal who can recruit, but maybe doesn't have that full trust of his coordinators. So it's kind of a balancing act when it comes to that, and maybe what Chip would look like. I feel like Chip would probably want the job. I don't think, I've heard that he doesn't have the best relationships with the athletic department down there. I think I've kind of just seen whispers of that over social media. So, like, I mean, yeah, our Dylan Rubin King said that he thought it was the most realistic option, not as far as what he wants, but what he thinks is going to happen. So I think it's kind of good to be hearing from multiple perspectives here, kind of about what we think things could look like.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of people saying going back to Chip would be like going back to Helfrich. I feel like that's a very similar deal with Wilcox. Chip and Wilcox are kind of in the same boat for me. I saw someone say Wilcox is like a defensive Helfrich, which I kind of laughed at. I kind of felt like that might be true. So, I feel like, if Chip and Wilcox didn't have the connections to Oregon, they wouldn't be involved in this discussion of being hired. So, why are they necessarily being involved in the first place? If, another school that doesn't have tie, or if another school is trying to hire someone, they probably wouldn't think about Wilcox or Chip as their hire.
Gotcha. Another question here from Mike Peters. His question is, if you had to pick one to be the next head coach, are you taking Mike Leach, who's over at Mississippi State, as a lot of people know, Kellen Moore, who I believe is the offensive coordinator for the Cowboys? I know he's with the Cowboys organization. Or are you taking Joe Brady, freshly back on the market after getting fired by the Panthers? This is an interesting one. I think that I don't think Leach makes sense. I think he's kind of he's a funny coach, and as far as from a media perspective, he says he's just super unfiltered, and just it's whatever, what you see is what you get with Mike Leach. And I think just with the whole air raid offense, it doesn't fit Oregon's identity at all. And who's to say that Oregon's next coach might not try to change the identity? I think that's probably one of the biggest questions that the administration is kind of looking at and asking these guys when they bring them in is, what's your vision for the program? And I don't think the whole air raid that is tied into Mike Leach makes a lot of sense. I think Kellen Moore would be really interesting. I almost feel like I would go with Kellen Moore because Joe Brady hasn't been, he's really young, really young guy. And he's never been a head coach before. And I feel like Kellen Moore has more of a proven track record. And then you also look at his career at Boise State, which was really, really fun to watch. So out of these three, I think I'm going with Moore. Who are you going with, Nick?
I think Kellen Moore would be interesting, but I don't think he would take the job. I think he's very happy.
Yeah, who even knows if he wants to leave?
Yeah, I think he's very happy in Dallas, and I think he might be on track even for an NFL head coaching job at some point. So I'm going to go with Joe Brady. I think, he did have a failed stint in the NFL, but, Carolina didn't have many playmakers. Christian McCaffrey was out for a good portion of his time there. So he didn't really get that full offense up and running there. And he's never even been an offensive coordinator in college, let alone a head coach. So I think it would be a massive jump to take. And frankly, Joe Brady wouldn't be my first choice, but out of these three, I think I would go with Joe Brady just because of him being a very young but smart offensive mind and what he could do with the offense that way. And, we don't even know much about his recruiting prowess because he was only an analyst at LSU for a year or two. And we don't know how much he was even involved in recruiting there. So it's tough to even talk about recruiting with him. But if we're simply going off of play calling and all that, I would go with Joe Brady.
Yeah, because it's hard to tell. We can transition to the next comment here coming from Andrew. Andrew says, if Uncle Phil threw $85 million at Brady, I'd be 100% on board. And I think after the Carolina disaster, I think he's done with the NFL. That's another piece at play here is, what's that contract going to look like for the next head coach? Because it was reported that the offer that they were prepared to make Cristobal was 10 years, $85 million, I believe is what Canzano's report said over at the Oregonian. But as far as Brady and him wanting out of the NFL, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say something like that without knowing him. You say the Carolina disaster, which I totally agree. It was super ugly, but I mean, look at that team, man. I mean, look at the options that they had to deal with, or to work with, rather. They had Darnold, and he got hurt, and then they brought back Cam. I'm trying to think if they had some AFL quarterback. I think that was in there. I'm totally blanking on the name. Oh, is it Philip Walker? I don't know. That's I'm not sure. Oh, PJ Walker. There you go. Yeah, PJ Walker. That's what his name came up on when I Googled it. But you had that, and then you also had Christian McCaffrey being hit and miss all year and not being super healthy. I think he got ruled out for the season last I heard. So who's to say? Maybe he wants to give it another shot, or like you're saying, Andrew, maybe he had that experience and it's like, okay, it's not the best, for me in the NFL, and I want to give college one more go. And just from offensive appeal, I feel like Oregon's definitely got to be up there with the best of with the best of them as far as the rest of the programs in the country.
Yeah, no argument there.
All right, let's see what we got here. Colin Jones says, everyone acting like Chip is a good choice, but 2 years in a row now, Chip almost beat our Ducks and had them on the ropes with way less talent. Oh, maybe he said that Chip is not a good choice because he's advocating for Chip here. 2 years in a row, Chip almost beat our Ducks and had them on the ropes with way less talent. Team them up with our young guys equals success. You want to take that one?
Yeah, that's definitely a fair point, and that's definitely a glass half full type of approach. And Chip could work. I mean, there's no one saying that Chip is gonna take this program down to the dumps. He was extremely good here the last time, and with his relationship with Phil Knight, with the Nike connection that Oregon has, and all the facilities that Oregon has, maybe he can revitalize, and strike lightning twice of what he found the last time it was here. But that's now been 9 years, and a lot changes in 9 years. And I think the more likely scenario would be he doesn't get it back to where he was back when he was here a decade ago. But he could. Chip's a smart guy, and Chip could definitely bring it back.
I think when I'm looking at Chip, at what Oregon would look like with him, if they were to bring him back now versus in the past when he really got Oregon humming, I do like to think about the type of lineman that he's brought in. I think he was or that he worked with rather when he was coaching the Ducks, is they're totally different body types now, right? You got to look at who you have on the roster now and who makes more sense there. Mario brought in some absolute monsters. Like, these guys are 300 plus pretty much across the board. And does that work with a Chip Kelly offense? Are they going to have the mobility that he looks for and covets in his guys?
Yeah, and I will say this about Chip. His offense at UCLA was much different than what it was at Oregon. He did kind of, shape his offense to what he had at UCLA. Used a lot more tight ends, had the offensive linemen way more, scrunched together. At Oregon, he had the offensive linemen kind of stretched out a little bit more. So he definitely changed the offensive system up at UCLA, and I'm sure he would do the same thing at Oregon based off of the talent he has here and what he thinks would work best. So, it's not going to be the exact same offense a decade ago. He's evolved a little bit, and he'll evolve with his roster. So, and his offenses are still really good. No one's denying that. He was extremely good this past year with DTR at the helm offensively with UCLA. And it's more of his defenses. A lot of his assistants and coordinators are old friends of his from Oregon and beyond, who have kind of run their course maybe a little bit. Could Oregon convince him to find new guys and try to shape the defense differently? If he could do that, I might be more on board with a higher Chip.
Yeah, and then someone had a comment here I'm gonna bring up. Jake O2Q. He said, if we bring in Chip, we could just bring someone else in to recruit, right? I think that's maybe another dynamic of this whole situation. If you bring in a guy like that maybe doesn't have a reputation as a recruiter, how much value is Chip going to have in how he builds out his staff, right? I think that's another big piece of the puzzle. And then when I think about the product that they put on the field this year at UCLA, I mean, Zach Charbonnet and Britton Brown were special for sure. I think they kind of lost some steam towards the end of the season to Oregon State. BJ Baylor was phenomenal. And then Deshaun Fenwick was another name, obviously at play. Trey Lowe as well. So I think that Chip's offense here, if you're watching on the stream, we have the rankings as far as the stats go. UCLA was second in the conference with total yards per game, 441.3. And then let's look at the points per game. First in the conference with 36.7 points per game. And that kind of goes to another point about, doing more with less down there in UCLA. I think that it's not a stretch to say that the talent on Oregon's roster is definitely superior to that of UCLA. So I guess the biggest thing is I just wonder how the talent on the roster is going to mesh with Chip. I'm not saying that I don't think it's going to go well. I think obviously the skill talent is going to be tremendous. And another thing that you have to think of as we're kind of looking into the next year, CJ Verdell and Travis Dye both have more eligibility. Like, have you thought about that at all, Nick?
Oh yeah, I've thought about it.
That's wild to me.
Yeah.
So
and, who knows what they decide? I feel like CJ would probably go to the draft unless his injury that he suffered against Stanford keeps him out through the combine. If he was out through the combine, wasn't able to show the NFL scouts, what he was about, I could see him coming back then. As for Travis, I feel like it's really more of a 50-50 decision for him of kind of what he feels is best for his career going forward. I could see it going either way, really. As for Travis, he didn't. Not that it necessarily means anything, but he didn't walk at the senior night. So could mean something, could mean nothing, but something to keep an eye on.
Definitely. There's another previous comment that I thought was kind of interesting, and this is just cool about cool thing about YouTube and all these social platforms. Let's see. So yeah, this is from Curveball saying, Miami fan here, wish Oregon the best though. I know getting your coaching staff taken really sucks. And then I asked him, I'm like, how are people feeling about the Cristobal hire down there? And he said, I'd say about 70% happy. A lot of people wanted Lane too. And then he kind of clarified and he said, as in Lane over Mario, not both together, which I think is kind of a cool overlap, right? Because you're looking at how all these people are a lot of people, I shouldn't say all of them, a lot of people are looking at Lane Kiffin as kind of the trendy choice here among the Oregon fan base. And I know that doesn't speak for all the Oregon fans, but in yesterday's podcast that you can find on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify, I was thinking about how I wanted to title it, and I just put it out there. I said, is Lane Kiffin the trending choice among the Oregon fan base? And if you check Twitter on the Twitter Spaces, you'll see I think the funniest ones I've seen are Lane train to Lane County or something along that. And there's like hundreds of people in there. So I feel like it's picking up a lot of steam, but I just kind of thought that was an interesting dynamic that this guy's saying from a Miami fan that they also wanted Lane. So that's just kind of a cool little overlap.
Yeah, I really like to poke in and see what the Oregon fan base is talking about on Twitter. It's been a lot of fun the past few days here to try to get the temperature of the fans and really understand where everyone's head's at. Everyone has their own opinion on this hire, and it's pretty cool to see all these different names popping up that I haven't even thought about. Some are some legit interesting names you could talk about. Some are pretty outlandish, but it's still entertaining. And all of this has been really entertaining this week.
Here's a new one from Prompt Criticality. Go get Coastal Carolina coach Jamie Chadwell. Diamond in the rough hire. That guy wins and could be the next Urban Meyer level head coach. Coastal Carolina is a team that I think a lot of people slept on. Obviously we do the new AP rankings, the new college football playoff ranking stories over on Ducks Digest that were coming out throughout the season. just to kind of track the movement across college football and seeing who's rising and who's falling. And Coastal Carolina was a school that I saw in there, pretty frequently. And they weren't. I don't think that they were pushing up terribly high. I want to say that at one point they were on the verge of top 15, if I remember correctly. But they're a fun team to watch. Weren't they didn't they played BYU last year, right? And then weren't their quarterback was saying anytime, anywhere, and then didn't BYU win? Am I remembering that right?
No. BYU, I'm pretty sure BYU was the one saying that, and then they went to
Coastal. Oh, okay.
Coastal beat them. Coastal beat BYU last year.
Okay, yeah, 22-17 was the final there. At the time of that game, BYU was 11th and Coastal Carolina was 14th. Because that was like one of the craziest games of the year, right? Because I think it was scheduled within and set up within like a week of because I think there were hurricanes or tornadoes or something. Maybe I'm not remembering that right, but that was just super wild. And then just looking into Jamie Chadwell's background here, he has a 29-19 record at Coastal Carolina, where he's been since 2017. Some of his other stops include East Tennessee State, Charleston Southern, North Greenville, Delta State. Yeah, I don't know. I think that I could see the intrigue, but I don't know if do you want to give a guy his first shot at a head coaching job at a place like Oregon with this hire?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go with this. Jamie Chadwell, the biggest downside with him is the fact that he's never coached at the Power 5 level before at all, like period. He hasn't been an assistant, hasn't been a coordinator, hasn't been a head coach at the Power 5 level. And that's a really steep jump to go from Coastal Carolina to University of Oregon. And not saying Jamie Chadwell isn't good. I think he's done a great job there at Coastal Carolina. But if I'm looking to hire someone, I'm trying to hire someone who has a little more track record at the Power 5 level. So I kind of understand and know that, it's more likely to work out than fall flat on your face. That, something could happen with a group of 5 coach like that.
I'm right there with you. But at the same time, people are also calling for Luke Fickell. But maybe I think that's a very different dynamic because he's obviously at the very top of that. And he has Ohio State experience.
Yeah, Ohio State experience, exactly.
Yeah, so that's what we have on that. John said, BYU said anyone, anywhere, and they lost to the former watermelon patch. And then, Eric had a question here. Odds we get an answer this weekend. I can't take this stress. Yeah, I mean, people are always on their phones. Go for it. What do you have to say?
Well, I'd say the odds are really good that by this weekend we'll get an answer. It's been 4 days, and I thought Friday, tomorrow, was the most likely day we'd get an answer. I think maybe more likely now we get one on Saturday or Sunday, but I don't think this is going to go past Sunday. I think they've probably got their list ready and they're interviewing people as we speak, probably. And after those interviews, they'll probably start to make a decision and try to lay out a contract and try to get a deal done. So, I would say sometime between tomorrow and Sunday, you get your answer.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of fans were or maybe it was yesterday on either in here or on Twitter, they were saying that they think that there's going to be something by Friday. So that's kind of what I'm trying to prepare for. But that's what's going to be so wild about it is I feel like, some national reporters will probably break it before, we kind of hear the official word, but got to be ready for anything in this coaching search. So I think, I'm with you. I don't think it really goes past Sunday because Friday, that'd be great, but it still seems just super fast and super early. So I think I'm more of the, take your time for it because I think we've been pretty clear just about where we stand on not needing to rush it with regards to the recruiting fallout. Aboriginal Phoenix asks, Lane or Urban, which one would you rather have if it was those two? I mean, Urban has a better track record as a head coach, right? You look at his stops at Ohio State and Florida. I mean, I don't really think that if people are saying Lane's a stretch, I feel like Urban's even more of a stretch. So if I had to choose between those two, I would probably say Urban, though, just because he's already achieved that success at a really high level, and he built out a really good staff at Ohio State, and I think that's a big part of the reason that they're doing so well now is because he groomed Ryan Day and brought in good coordinators that were capable of taking over. Once he made that decision to head to the NFL, or to retire, I should say, and before heading to the NFL. So I think that's another big part of this is I think people need to consider whoever Oregon hires as the head coach, keep a close eye on who he chooses to bring in to fill those 2 vacant coordinator spots. Because if the head coach leaves, then hopefully they'll have somebody on staff, and they're kind of looking at a Marcus Freeman Notre Dame situation.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance Rob Mullins and Michael Schill would hire Urban Meyer. I just think the baggage there is way too big, and the fact that they'd have to answer to that and everything, there's absolutely no chance that they would go and hire him. So in this question, I go with Lane.
Yeah, I guess I was going more for, I was taking the realism out of it and kind of just choosing between these two as just sole coaches and none of the off field baggage. But no, I'm right there with you. I don't think that it's super likely. Vincent asks, what about Hugh Freeze at Liberty? You talk about a guy playing with quarterbacks and the success that he's had. Malik Willis is a dude. I mean, I saw him at the Elite 11 over the summer. When he came in, he was letting it rip. That was really fun. I think that was one of the coolest aspects of the Elite 11 is you got to see all those top high-profile high school guys, going through the throwing gauntlet and making all these different types of angles and off-platform and all that. And then even some 7-on-7 stuff, if I remember correctly. And Malik Willis was really good because he's the biggest guy I think of when I think of Liberty. But yeah, I mean, we keep bringing up guys that have done well on the football field, but then they have off-field issues. So I don't think that I don't kind of the same deal here. I don't think that Hugh Freeze is much of an option.
Yeah, Hugh left Ole Miss with a lot of sanctions down there. I don't think Oregon would want any part of that.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Let me see. Yeah, John Anderson says one hot commodity is Utah's Morgan Scaley. He came up in yesterday's pod, and I think that he's definitely a name to watch. But he's been at Utah forever, and if Whittingham does end up retiring, like I think some people are expecting or speculating, I think that he's probably that guy, like we talked about with with Ryan Day at Ohio State when Urban retired. I think that Scaley would probably be the next guy in line to take over that Utes program.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
All right, let's see. What other questions we have? Brandon's question is, what do you guys think about NFL coaches? Anyone come to mind? Thanks. Love the channel. Yeah, I think that, well, first of all, thanks for the kind words, Brandon. I know you've been he's one of those names that I've recognized, popping up in these live streams a little bit more consistently. So it's always fun to see familiar names and people coming back to talk about the Ducks. Yeah, I think that one name that has kind of been thrown out there is Eric Bieniemy. I feel like he's kind of a reach when you look at those high level NFL coaches. But the Chiefs this year, I feel like they have obviously taken a step back and haven't enjoyed as much success. So I think it's harder to go and get that NFL coach because you always have that, you have to get them out of the NFL versus, staying in the college level. I think it's a lot easier to get a guy going from college to the NFL than bringing him back from the NFL, if that makes sense. Because I think he was linked to the Colorado job at one point before Darrell took over. So I think he would be a cool name, especially if you're looking for a big name to bring in on offense.
Yeah, I got an NFL name. Tom Herman, who's currently an analyst with the Chicago Bears.
I like that one too.
Yeah, Oregon was interested in him. Kind of, brought his name up a little bit when Taggart left a couple years ago, and obviously didn't come to fruition. But they've had interest in him in the past, and Herman wasn't nearly as bad at Texas as I think some people think. He was a pretty good recruiter down there, and things kind of just piled one after another on him at Texas, and they end up going with Sark. But I still think he's got a lot of potential, and that would definitely be an interesting NFL name that I think the Ducks could maybe try to pull out of the NFL.
I remember when he was at Texas out there in Austin, he was definitely blowing up on the recruiting trail and bringing some pretty big names there. And I think that's probably why a lot of people are unimpressed with Texas, is because you had the whole all gas no brakes, and we're back after every win. And then didn't they lose? They lost to Kansas, right? Was that this season?
That was Sark that did that.
Okay, yeah. I'm just talking about what Texas looked like this year, but yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, Herman, I think he did okay at Texas, but obviously, the steam kind of ran out, and I think that he's a guy that you give a call to and then see what his thoughts are on maybe a job like this. Prompt criticality says Oregon can't be afraid of a big name coach leaving. Big names attract more big names on the coaching staff. Ask Ryan Day, Lincoln Riley, etc. No better way to build for the future. I think that's an awesome point. And I think that's why, especially when you're looking at who they can attract and who's going to make the most of the talent on the roster now, that's another thing I think I'm kind of juggling. If you want to bring in a good recruiter, obviously that's huge. But if you bring in an X's and O's coach that is really good at utilizing them and getting the most out of his talent, then that kind of goes back to the chip argument, right? About maybe having him bring in big assistants that are pretty capable recruiters. So I think this is a great point, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree there.
All right. Let's see. We're already at an hour, so we're probably going to wind down here pretty soon. Colin Jones threw out a cool name. Byron Leftwich at head coach. He's young and he can connect with players and recruits, and he's a great play caller. What do you think about that one, Nick?
Yeah, that's another name that people can throw out there, and there would definitely be worse candidates. I could definitely see that happening. What's your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm looking into him a little bit more. Obviously I've definitely heard of him. He's been in the NFL for a long time, so it'd be as a coach. I mean, of course, but maybe I don't know. If you're Leftwich, I like the name. I mean, I think it's a cool person to consider, and obviously the Bucs have been really successful. Maybe does Tom Brady enter the conversation here as far as if Leftwich wants to leave? If Brady ends up retiring at some point, it feels like he's never going to retire. He just keeps getting older. He's just a baller every year, and I feel like they're always big threats in the playoffs. Any team that has him, greatest quarterback of all time is pretty obviously pretty good company to be in. Kind of pains me to say that because I'm a Niner fan and I really like Joe Montana, but the longevity that he's had is pretty undeniable. So I bring up Tom Brady to say if he ends up retiring, I think that would maybe open the window for Leftwich. But at the same time, it's not like if you're Oregon, you can't wait on a decision like that.
Yeah, and Leftwich I also think is likely to get a head coaching job in the NFL soon. So I don't know why he would go to college when he's likely to be in line for an NFL job.
Yep, exactly. Let's see. What do we have here? Choppy says, if I was going to snipe an up-and-comer, I would try to poach Kyle Whittingham's staff. I don't know many of the names on Whittingham's staff except for Morgan Scaley. Have you looked into that at all, Nick?
There's not for head coach. I don't think there's anyone there that is going to really interest Oregon, to be honest. Their staff does an amazing job at developing talent and all that. They're probably the best in the Pac-12. But where Oregon's at right now, I don't think his staff, there's anyone there that would really make sense as a head coaching candidate.
I gotcha. Yeah, and I'm looking at Andy Ludwig as another name on that staff. His third year of his second full-time stint at Utah. So again, you're kind of looking at the same situation with Scaley, just as these guys are really long-term guys at Utah. It's looking like, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that he's looking that staff is looking super realistic. But obviously they've done a lot of good things there, and and they got the Ducks number. That's for sure. Let's see. Yeah, any concluding thoughts here, Nick, as we wind down this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast?
Well, I would just say, just relax as a fan base. We're all waiting for the news, and it's going to come soon enough in probably the next 24 to 72 hours. So, whatever happens, happens, and I'm sure we'll all be here to talk about it.
Yes, we will. You know that once that news breaks, we'll be covering the heck out of it. It's still crazy to me that I said this yesterday, and I feel like I'm still kind of thinking about it. Just that Mario's gone, but you got to move on. And just see what the next era of Oregon football is going to look like. I still have I have faith in the Oregon athletic department that they're going to get a good job, a good hire. Rob Mullins has a good track record, and he knows what the future of the program, I think, needs to look like, especially with him being on the college football playoff committee or having some experience there. I think that'll be valuable for sure. As far as when he's taken into account what the Ducks are going to need here in this next head coach. But yeah, that's I think that's going to do it for us on this episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. You guys, huge thank you to everybody that is watching on the live stream here. If you're watching, go ahead and make sure to subscribe to the channel while you're here. Just hit that red rectangle, and it really helps me out. It only takes a second out of your day. And then another reminder, go follow me on Twitter at mtorsports. Follow Nick at nickbat22. And then you can also find us on all the other social media platforms. We're at Ducks Digest on Instagram, Twitter. We also have a Facebook page as well. And then if you go to my Twitter page, you can also sign up, subscribe to our free newsletter, the Ducks Digest newsletter. Try to send that out every day so you guys don't miss out on any of the crazy news that we have coming out, whether it be team news. We're also covering, so that's football team news. We also have both men's and women's basketball teams. We're covering them as well with basketball season going. And then national signing period, early signing period next week. We're going to be all over that. So make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel and the newsletter, and make sure you check out all those other social platforms. Maybe going to do a Twitter space soon, but I'll make sure to notify you guys of that when the time comes. And then last thing, go ahead and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on any future live streams. This has been another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.